Are you considering a career as a project coordinator? Have you ever wondered what stands between a good project and a great one? It's not just about the planning or the executing, but there is one crucial role. You know what that role is? The project coordinator. If you're ready to deep dive into the skills, the strategies, and the secrets that make a great, no, an exceptional project coordinator part of your team, as well as the heartbeat of your team to have a successful project, you're going to want to watch today's episode. Today's episode is one of those episodes that really, if you're trying to jump into this thing that I love, that I hope you fall in love with, called project management, is a game changer. I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, listen, that just simply means Ed. I have an 8-point framework, and these 8 points, my goal, my mission, my job today is to unpack today's title, which is entitled The Role of the Project Coordinator. What you need to know. Again, the role of the project coordinator, what you need to know. Point number one, facilitate project meetings. Project coordinator, they're responsible for facilitating project meetings, including project agendas, taking minutes of the meeting, and ensuring action items as well as risk are being assigned appropriately and completed. One of the things, family, if you're thinking about becoming getting into project management, normally the first step may be for you as a project coordinator. So here, I want to give you, for those that are thinking of being a project coordinator, some actionable steps. So let's say you're responsible for a particular meeting. You will want to develop a meeting agenda. I would say get a template. So all you have to do at that point is literally copy and paste. So basically you'll get create you a template for agenda for a meeting. And again, some of the key points you want to put in that template is risk. You always want to talk about your risk and issues first, your project status, and of course, any action items that are relevant. And one of the things that I like doing is putting a purpose of the meeting. And this is something I've been really testing out and experimenting over the last maybe year or so, which is outcome. I learned that from Alex Hormozy when he talked about what is the outcome of this meeting? What are we trying to get? Because a lot of times what you will see happen, family, is a lot of people won't show up to your meeting because they don't know what is the outcome. What are we trying to achieve? When we get together, are we going to walk away better than where we are? So outcomes. So one of the outcomes, like I said, I would take the agenda potentially and just extract really some tangible outcomes that we're going to actually pull from that. Point number two, support project onboarding. Project coordinators, and this is something they don't really talk about. If you're a project coordinator, you may be responsible for supporting the onboarding of new team members as well as stakeholders to the project. Here's something that I would recommend if you are a project coordinator, meaning if you're new or you're wanting to get into this, develop like an onboarding checklist type deal. Basically, it outlines the steps and resources needed effectively to onboard new team members or stakeholders. Also, what I would do is when you onboard that particular stakeholder, see if you can find a mentor or a buddy, because it's not one of those things where, especially if they're, and I mean this, if they're new to the organization. If they're not new to the organization, then you don't have to worry about this step. But finding a mentor or buddy for them, because it's going to be crucial, so that way they can navigate the organization effectively, because the organization may be divided up in certain ways. There may be certain contexts that you would assume handle certain things and they don't. So finding them a mentor or a buddy type really will help them in their journey as far as the onboarding process. All right, let's move on to point number three. Point number three, coordinate project closeout. This is why I used to love when I had project coordinators, because one of the most challenging things is when you're going through a closeout as a project manager. There's so many artifacts. Let's just put it like this. There's so many artifacts, data, everything like that. And so when you have someone assisting you through this initiative of closing out a project, is really just really helpful. So what do you mean by that, Ed? So let's say that I have all of the I'm working on gathering the artifacts, meaning like our project charter, making sure all of these are packaged or zipped together in a file. And then I can hand it over to the project coordinator where they can basically upload it into a central repository, basically archiving everything. And then they could, while the project coordinator is doing that, I could be focusing on preparing to get the lessons learned register uh, discussion, I should say, because you should be maintaining your lessons learned throughout the uh, entire part of the project, and just instead of waiting until the end. So one of the things that it really just helps a project manager a lot. So again, I'm a checklist or checklist type of guy, so I'm going to recommend develop a project checklist that outlines all the steps and deliverables needed to effectively close out your project. Normally, organizations, if they have a PMO, they will have some type of checklist for you. But what I would also recommend is taking their checklist and looking at it and comparing it against some of the things you also think that it may need to go there. Now, if it's not applicable to what the business is asking for, you still may want to keep it for yourself or in a repository for your team. Point number 4, ensure project compliance. This is another key one. Sometimes you may have projects, especially working in the space I work in, is which is informational security. You may find yourself as a project coordinator responsible to go look up any laws or regulations and even organizational policies that's applicable to the particular project. And as a project manager, sometimes you don't just have the bandwidth to do that. And so that's useful when you have a project coordinator that can really assist and drive that. Even if they get the car running, as they would say, you still have the ability to get in the car and drive it. But getting the car ready, meaning getting gas in there, getting the car cleaned up, because we're going on a road trip, ladies and gentlemen. But no, seriously, I would definitely recommend that, when you're connecting and working with a project coordinators, you would want to know, project coordinator wants to know, how do I go about searching? Is there any documentation I can start looking for to see if there's anything compliant related? That is going to be key, because if not, you may get down far down the project and then realize, oh, we were supposed to connect with the government on whatever that particular piece, or we were supposed to connect with the state, or whatever that piece is. And so you want to ensure that you are checking the compliancy aspects of the actual project. Let's move on to point number 5. Message. You already know I could not leave without talking about communication. This is what that book behind me is built on, The Magnetic Project Manager. By the way, shameless plug, the Magnetic PMO, basically the Magnetic Project Manager book, is coming in May 5th, as we say, Cinco de Mayo. So, hey, get you a cocktail, sit down and watch and read that book. All right, anyway, I digress. Communicate project status into stakeholders. Listen, the whole point, and I'm going to park here real quick because I want to expand on this point a little bit. The whole point of what a project coordinator is learning is they are preparing and prepping and going through the process of eventually becoming a actual project manager. So having the responsibility, if you're a project coordinator and a project manager offers you an opportunity to communicate to your stakeholder, to your key stakeholders or your sponsor or clients or team members, you want to walk into that. You want to accept that as much as you can. Now, this is if you want to go to the next step, which is project manager. Now, if you don't, then hey, maybe you just continue to do what you've been doing. But it seemed like you're not that type of person, because if you was, then you wouldn't be listening to this. So I say this, family, just see if you can get in front as a project coordinator. See if you can get in front of these key stakeholders and get them to be able to put a voice in with a face, because it's going to be important, especially when you are helping the project manager put together a communication plan, because this way is going to help you have an opportunity to know, hey, some stakeholders don't like emails. They'll like it after the end of the documentation process, but they would prefer, if there's something we need, send them a message in Asana, Slack or Teams, and then recap it in a email if possible. So you have to have some type of flexibility in doing that, and that's what a project coordinator can bring to the table. Point number 6. Listen, having a project coordinator coordinate the project kickoff meeting. To my project managers out there, you know it's not about the actual meeting. I mean, what I mean by that is like, once you have the stakeholders there, there's no problem going through the slides and talking about the actual project at a very high level. It's actually getting people there. It's actually, having people understand the purpose and the reasoning why they need to be there. And a project coordinator can help, drive that. Because let's say, for me, I've had kickoff meetings where there may be 50 to 100 people that need to be present. So either we break it up in multiple sessions, or we just have one big, huge session, because all 50 people are not going to show up, or all 20 people are not going to show up. So you either just do one session or multiple sessions, and that's something, when you're working with your project coordinator, they could facilitate that, because what they should be wanting to do is say, hey, I'm going to look at the various of people's schedule, and what I would do is, here's a quick tip: put a placeholder if we can find an appropriate time. Because this, family, I have to be honest with you, it's challenging when you got maybe 10 or more people that needs to be at a meeting because of their various, especially if you work globally. So that means you may have somebody in the UK, you may have somebody, I don't know, and where else have I? The Philippines, or India, or it could, they can be all like the time zones could be just so different. So you have being able to find different time zones, and call, I mean, and email or ping people and get on the phone with them and say, hey, we're having this kickoff. It's at 10 a.m., but I see that you have something blocked. See, nobody talks about this from a real life example, real life standpoint, meaning that, or when you're trying to have a successful project kickoff, having a project coordinator to get on the phones and negotiate times to say, hey, listen, we want to do it this at 10 o'clock. Is there anything that you can move on your calendar? Because I see it's blocked. This is key, family. If you don't take anything away from any of this content today, this is one of those points I really want you to take away, especially if you're transitioning into the career of a project coordinator, because when you have the negotiation ability, it's going to help you a lot. Okay, I won't beat that point up anymore. Point number 7: manage project dependencies. Listen, there's going to be an opportunity where there may be some dependencies from that are required from other projects. Okay, dependencies. Well, I know what a dependent. What do you mean, Ed? So what I'm saying here is that, let's say, for instance, and I'm going to use an IT reference because I have an IT background. So let's just say, for instance, we needed servers to be delivered on site at a particular facility. So that the dependency may be that we're waiting on procurement to execute the actual contract, and we're waiting for it to get approved on the actual billing of the actual server. So dependencies are things that may be in your project, or that may have impact on your project, which could impact your project schedule, your cost, as well as your scope, and of course your quality. So being able to identify these relationships, what I normally do, family, is I create a tracker of any dependencies that are impacting, or may or may not have a impact. You say, well, why is the may not? Well, because you never know. So I just want to have them there, and working with the various teams that are leading those initiatives. And here's another key point. You want to ensure that there's timelines associated with each of those dependencies. If you do not have timelines associated with those dependencies, again, they will impact your project. So really, what project coordinators can come in to assist is really having the responsibility to manage these project dependencies, including identify as well as tracking any relationship, as I stated before, between the task deliverables as well as resources. Point number 8: project scope management. It's one thing as a project manager, you are always working to protect your scope. You're like, no, no, no more adding. And okay, I'm done. I know I'm being over the top with it, but no, seriously, family. Coordinators are really responsible for coming in and monitoring the scope just to ensure that what we agreed on with the customer, what we agreed on with the sponsor, what we agreed on, you kind of see where I'm going, that we don't experience any type of gold plating, any type of scope creep, any of the things you want to think of, the context, we want to be able to protect our scope. And the project coordinator can truly come in and assist with you by developing a scope management plan along with the project manager that outlines how this scope will be managed, and if any change happen, how we will properly evaluate that and make a change only based off if it's been approved. And that takes us to the bonus. The bonus here is support project change management. Project coordinators may be responsible for supporting project change management activities. And this could be a compass of a lot of different things. It is really depending on the project coordinator skill set and the project manager, the comfortability there. So there's a lot of pieces, but the generalization of it is that when changes are either about to happen or in talks of happening, the project coordinator having the ability to communicate what the particular change is going to be. And then when the actual change actually happens, the project coordinator sending out a message letting the team know, hey, the change has occurred, properly documenting from beginning to end of how this change came about, who identified it. So there's so many pieces there, and we all know this is part of your change management plan. But one of the biggest things that I've seen a lot of times is when changes happen, project managers is guilty of this as well, but project coordinators as well, being able to communicate out what actually is going, what happened with the change, and why that change needed to happen, and what are the next steps. Okay, my closing remark, you know I have three of them. First one, facilitating our project meetings. If you want to truly be a project coordinator, or if you're already a current project coordinator, being able to really lead a meeting is really going to be helpful, just not for assisting the project manager, but also for your career as you make the next step in that progression of being a project manager. So being able, like I talked about, to put together what is the purpose of the meeting, what is the outcomes we're trying to get from the meeting, even having an agenda, and then taking the minutes from the meeting, meaning taking the points of documenting action items, documenting what we discussed, and being able to articulate that out via email, via however your team wants it to be. May even be uploaded to a SharePoint, a share file. I've seen it so many different ways. If that's the case, family, being able to have that conversation is going to be key for you. Point number two, communicate project status to stakeholders. Project coordinators, as I stated before, when a change happens, having the when a change happens, when new stakeholders come on board, where if a sponsor changes, if a sponsor changes out, anything, but being able to communicate the overall status, this is going to be key for you as well as a project coordinator, because one of the things you need to understand is, again, I keep referencing this and I'm doing it on purpose. When you make the transition from project coordinator to project manager, this is what you will be doing day in and day out. Point number three, coordinate project kickoff meetings. Again, project coordinators really add value by organizing and facilitating the project kickoff meetings, because sometimes as a project manager, having to negotiate with so many people during a project kickoff meeting to find times that work, and sometimes you just got to book the call and say, hey, I know I booked it on the time that you have another meeting, but this is the best I can do based on the majority. So that being able to make those type of decisions, it really allows a project coordinator to have the true success that they are looking for. Family, I truly appreciate you guys locking in with me today. What I wanted to share with you, if you're really thinking about making that jump, making that decision to be a project coordinator, or if you're already are a project coordinator, I really truly believe some of the things that we discussed today will really provide value to you. I don't want you just to listen to this information. I'm grateful that you do, but I also want you to apply it, experiment with it, and see if it works for you. Until next time, this has been your boy D. You know my motto, you know my slogan. I'm out.